Hang on a moment, you guys. I'm trying to still figure out and problem solve a couple of things. We're live right now. We're over here at the Stuart Ng Bookstore. I have a couple of books in front of me we're going to be sketching one side of, but I just want to see if I can get this in a horizontal profile, a horizontal shot. But let me see. Yeah, it seems like it doesn't want to let me do that. We may have to do a vertical. If you guys can hear me in the chat, please kind of inform me, let me know. I just want to make sure things technically are working okay. I see the chat. Welcome, you guys. But again, just kind of give me a quick update, a little bit of technical kind of our research and volume's perfect. Okay, good. Perfect. Again, we're going to have to do this as a vertical format because I'm trying to rotate the phone, but it wouldn't let me do that. So we'll keep it like this for now. I don't want to fumble it with it too much. I can give you guys a little bit of introduction just so that we can kind of get a sense of what we're going to be doing today. Obviously, you can kind of see I have some books over here. I have a lot more books on this side as well, too. Stack of them. And we are here over at the Stuart Ng Bookstore. This is in Torrance, California. You guys can find the link online, stuartngbooks.com, stuartngbooks.com. I'll put a link in the description so you guys can check it out. So if you guys ever want to purchase a book, look at other ones that are available at the store. You can look at their stuff. They have a great stock, a lot of art books, rare things, things that I myself would end up spending a lot of money on. So this kind of tells you like where I currently am. So this is not the Dynamic Bible 2. That is actually going to be worked on. But I have a little bit of I guess, things to share about that today as we do a live stream. We'll see who, kind of shows up today. I'm going to keep adjusting a couple things as we go along today here. So please excuse the fumbleness. All right. As we talk, I will be sketching inside these books. I think we got about maybe 40, 50 copies here I got assigned. So I'll be here for a little bit, sketching inside these. And they'll all be original sketches, obviously, where these books can be bought online under Stuart Ng's website. And so people will get originals if they purchase one on their own website. So I guess I'll just start right away into this. Now I'll be going into questions in just a moment. I'll actually even start with this question right now. This is from VPO poll. Should be related, we'll see. But you ask, recently you found out that when drawing digitally, it is way easier on your neck when using a tablet without a screen. Is this a bad practice to get used to? No, not necessarily. Using digital hardware is to whatever level you want to in terms of introduction of your education, whether sooner or later, it's going to be still fine. If it's comfortable for you using just a tablet, that's okay with me, because that's what I started with as well too. Drawing screen tablets is something I use today. But, in terms of that, there's no reason why you can't start using that now. Okay, so to give you guys a little bit of an idea as to like what I also want to share with you, because obviously I have books here, the old ones, and I guess this is a better way to kind of talk about this. This book, it's been a couple of years now, the Dynamic Bible 1, and I finished this book back in like 2019, 2020. So it's been a number of years. We didn't officially like start selling it into like conventions and shows till probably about 2021, 22. We didn't start going back to conventions and shows until about 22, 23. So during COVID years, this book was done but wasn't available just yet. So there was a period about a year or two, which this was kind of in stasis. Once this book started rolling out, it's been a number of years now. Now in 2025, people wonder, it's like, well, where's the second volume? What's the plan, essentially? Well, the initial goal was for me to produce multiple volumes. So this is volume one, and the first volume one Dynamic Bible contains a lot of the exercises, and these are the lecture notes in which I would use in my classes. So, about warm-ups, exercises for physical, sort of like muscle movements, and line control, building confidence, building shape and form, understanding three dimensions of things, turning structures of objects in many different angles by eye, and then being able to apply that towards then the application and drawing from observation. So we would use things like insects and bugs in the first book as our initial sort of subject matter to study from, which I also then kind of paired that with vehicles of automobiles, cars. So with cars, just kind of like contrasting a machinery to organics was done on purpose so that people can understand that the technique is about being able to apply to all subject matters using a very unison method of thinking and approach towards primitive breakdown of form. So the future books was about being able to incorporate additional subjects. So even here at the end of the book, I talk about I'm going to introduce bone structure and military vehicles. So that's the initial plan, and something I'm still doing. So then that begs the question again, where is volume two? Well, that's being worked on right now. So this, it's been a minute since I've done a live stream. I've been traveling. The beginning of the year was rough, and we had a couple of streams here and there, but right now I'm on break in classes. So I figured I'd come in now to share with you guys a bit more just content. This actually has some originals, stuff that I'm working on right now. So what I can do for you is to give you just a little bit of a preview of things that are kind of coming up soon. The intention is to try to get this done this year. So this will be hopefully out. My initial plan was maybe Comic-Con, but we'll see where it goes in terms of scheduling. What you're seeing right now are the actual original pages. And the reason why it feels kind of like the way it's placed in layout is because there's going to be text, obviously, for the book layout, right? So in terms of how that works is that my process in making books in general, there's always the idea and the concept, right? And then from the intention of the concept, I do thumbnail process. So I do this in Procreate, actually. So with digital Procreate, I can take it with me anywhere, and I would thumbnail the entire book. So the Dynamic Bible 2, in terms of written thumbnail process, is complete. So the entire book is done. It's about over 100 something pages. As I got all that complete, then I turned to the paper, the traditional materials, which I then generate the actual art. Now, all that text was written in notes in the thumbnail version, so I don't handwrite it. We're going to do it in digital format. So I'll type it in there using, usually InDesign is my main sort of layout program. The paper that I'm using for this is just a Strathmore marker paper, nothing too special, but it's smooth, takes pen really well. Igo Street ink, so this is all just felt tip pen. So even though I did thumbnails before, I still don't do underlay when it comes to my actual book layouts. These are just done with the Faber-Castells. I also use these Sakura Microns, Pigmas, and these originals. So this is actually the first chapter, which I'll give you guys a bit of a preview to. So you'll start to see again that it incorporates a lot of the elements from the first Dynamic Bible, but has things like form, how to combine, deconstruct, and this is now the first part that goes into the bone structure of things. So all this empty space area will be all notes in terms of my thought process, the information about what this page is about, what the whole process is. So this will be filled with information. So then we go from primitive form to a lot more detail, into breakdown of planes, into the anatomical, sort of like nuances of the animal that we're looking at. And then we even specify a certain animal that we're going to centralize on. And I build off of that in terms of like what angles of views do we look at, how do we start to plan things out to build a form, going into things like even more surface details of hatching, hatching exercises, anatomical accuracy, playing with things like shadow and render, posing and actions, anatomical more details, cross-hatching methods of variances. So this is just the first chapter of the book. So there's a total of 3 subjects in Dynamic Bible 2. Each chapter is probably about, I want to say 30, see, 20, 40, 50, 60. So probably about 30 something pages. No, it's actually probably going to be more about 40. So it'll be about 40, 80, about 120, 140 pages total overall. So the second portion of this is going to be in military vehicles. And the last portion will go into actually marine life, fish and that sort of stuff. So this second book, once I complete all the art, which I'm intending to do so hopefully by this month, I need to lay out all of the information based on text, and then it'll go to print. The goal of Comic-Con San Diego of July may not be possible. So if anything, we'll probably preview it. We might do things like pre-order. So once that gets printed, we might aim for New York Comic-Con or LIPOX Expo in October. So this book is going to come out this year, no matter what. As you can see, these are the originals I want to share with you guys. So people that are just joining in right now, I'm giving you a preview of the Dynamic Bible 2. And this first chapter goes into the bone structure, how to break down form and shape using that specific subject of skeletal systems. We'll have vehicles of military and animals of marine life as well too for the entire book. So this kind of shows you how I actually do these projects. This first Bible will give you then an idea as to how that outcome looks like. So these sort of pages over here would have been done on that similar paper, just with ink, and this text wouldn't have been written in. They would have been written by thumbnail process earlier for me as I scanned the pages. So those pages I was scanning in about maybe 600 DPI resolution. I have a large bed scanner, and then I would clean it up in Photoshop, and then I would drop in this text using InDesign. So all the text has been written out already. So I've written the entire book. So for those that have been very curious about the state of where the second book is, that is where it's at. So for those of you that were able to join me live, it kind of gives you a preview, but also, I guess, the real first announcement of the second book kind of in process to be complete by this year. So for those of you looking forward to it, volume 2 this year, most likely October will be the case. Will I be at Lightbox Expo? Yes, I will be. That will be where most likely I will launch Dynamic Bible 2. So hopefully if you guys attend the show, you will find me there and I will assign in them. And today what we're doing is I have a stack of the first Dynamic Bibles over here. And I need to draw on them. So as we're here now live, I'm going to sketch with you guys and talk, answer questions, Q&A, that sort of stuff. Just kind of see how everyone is and get to just hang out and pick an afternoon to relax for a moment. So at this point, if people do have certain questions, I'll try to answer them the best I can. Do understand that I'm kind of live streaming on the phone. So I can only see so much text fly by because it scrolls through. And I'll end up missing certain things. So just if I missed a question, repeat it again, and I'll try to get to it as best as possible. So just be patient with me as I do these sort of live streams. I get warmed up on the very first book by just doing an animal. That's what I tend to turn to most of the times. And we'll start off by doing my typical sort of like sketch that I really enjoy doing, which is big cats. So with the big cats, we'll do more of a 3/4 view, side view / 3/4 profile. And we'll just kind of play directly into the shapes and lines. My go-to ends up being a lot of times the lion, but today we'll start with a tiger. And this is kind of like warm-up, essentially, for me. These books are not numbered, so each original sketch that I do is not numbered to a limited case. These are constantly reprinted, so I come back to Stuart Ng and I'll do more signings. So I'm here live right now. So if you guys are in the LA area, you can come out here to the store at the very moment, and you can come out and hang out if you want to. The store itself is awesome. You can get lost in here with the amount of books that they have. It's a recent location they actually be able to move to. So if you want to see their new layouts, definitely come by and check it out. It's an awesome place. There was a question that I'll check out real quickly. And the question is, how long did it roughly take you to get comfortable drawing from imagination? I've been able to draw from the imagination since I was young. And this was due to the fact that I always drew from, the studies of other artists and properties. I would take things like comic characters or cartoons and do my own imaginative versions of them. But I would do this since, I was a young teen. Do I think that's something that is born, innate? Can it be trained? It definitely can be trained, but I do think that people are somewhat born with the ability to be able to excel in their imaginative skills. But for those of you that feel like I can't do it very well, but I do think it can be trained going through educational systems and being able to acquire a lot of content and consuming it, things like books and comics and cartoons and games, which will feed into your inspiration of being able to draw more from your imagination because you need the fuel for it. So the training that we do from the classical systems will help you express and communicate visually towards that. So for me, it took a while, yes, in terms of it applied to more of a confident level, but I've been able to always play with it since I was very young. But I hope that answers that question. So now we're going into some of the details into the stripes. Top portion. So you'll see me kind of jump around back and forth quite a bit. And today, because we're sitting and hanging out and trying to run the stream, maybe about a good hour or so. Normally, I would try to pump these out as quickly as possible so I can not hang up on trying to produce too much detail into these sketches. But today, with the live stream, I'll spend a bit of time and just kind of give it a little bit more, not effort, but more on the sense of like mindfulness to things like line and detail work and whatnot. I should have brought my stamp, but so this kind of gives you an idea about how these original sketches look inside these books. And this is really the only way to get these sort of originals sketches inside the Dynamic Bible purchased online. I only would sign at like Comic Cons and stuff like that, which is where you can maybe get an original sketch if you purchased a book. But if you just found the book online through a different store, typically they would just have the raw books without sketches. So if you want originals, which is priced decently because they only have a extra charge of like an extra 10, something like that, where the base price is like 30, 35, so it's like 40 on Stuart Ng, but you get an original sketch. So go to Stuart Ng Books and you'll be able to find these copies come up there fairly soon. Lucas is asking, do you visually have a picture in mind before drawing or do you just go with the flow? It always goes with the concept or an intention of an idea. It could be something that I know because I've seen it before. It could be imaginative, but still based on something I have seen. So for example, I could say, I want to draw something using the tiger or big cat and create something out of that. And so there is that intention of idea. And then based on that, there's a bit of the free flow that comes in. And the free flow is purely just experience. First sketch. Let this dry out a little bit. This is a new pen that I'm using right now too. I was in Taiwan last week and I was at the stationery store and I found this one. This is a Japanese brush pen actually, but I think it's what is that? The Kuretake brand or the Pentel brand, one of those two, but it's more of a felt tip brush pen, which is pretty nice. So we're gonna grab another book. There's a question I just missed. Speedmaster's asking, are you familiar with Jeff Watts? Yes, absolutely. I'm decent as a figure drawing, but I can't seem to shade like he does, and I don't know how to practice it. Copy his stuff. Master copies, right? Cosmos is asking, what is the best routine you can have for learning how to draw? Don't worry so much about techniques and systems. Really go into the more the habitual manner of producing and sketching just purely for interest and fun in a consistent manner. Don't worry so much about the outcome just yet. Really go more towards interests of things that you have, whether it's more figurative based, animal stuff. It could be subject matter, or even just playing with tool sets. But the idea is to play as much as you can. It's the only way to keep growing, is because you get familiarized to movements and pressures and materials, subject matter, and then you start to introduce systems and techniques afterwards. Luca's asking, do I recommend copying masters for young artists? Absolutely, all the time. So Milan's asking, is Liber District going to have copies of original sketches? They will not, because where their books are is based out in France. So not being out there, I can't sketch those books, and they're shipped from the actual manufacturer, the publisher. So I don't get to touch them. So the only place you can get the original sketches is at Stuart Ng Books, unless you found me at like some convention. Let's go into something else. We're going to continue this exploration of animals still. We started with the big cat. I like doing more head studies because I want to be able to elevate the scale of the sketch to being more focused towards just that thing. Let's try one bit more full body though. Maybe some kind of bird. Bird sketches are really fun. Let's see here. So right now I'm looking for the idea, what kind of bird of decision of choice. I can even just make one up. So I'll choose a bird. So let's choose a bird. Let's go with a hornbill. Using the hornbill, I will create something. Okay. So from the creation, how does that work? Well, from the bird that I've chosen, I'm now going to think of a hybrid, a secondary element. So in terms of creativity, a lot of fun things to do is to be able to hybrid stuff together. Taking one element you can see from observation, maybe taking another element that could be also maybe more inspired by story or function or roles and tasks. So for example, I can take a hornbill and apply it to, let's say, like a wizard. Hybrid, mashups, right? So I'm not copying a character that exists already, but these are like known tasks and roles and functions and types of characters and what do they call them? Not cliche, but there's a certain name, like a profile to the character. So let's play with it first as a bird. With a bird, let's go into that big crest to the horn. And this would be like some kind of aged hornbill. So I'm just now flowing. Now we're just making it up as we go. But my brain will feed me memory of things that I have seen based on the bird and the idea and concepts of things like wizards. And so to be kind of a anthropomorphized animal-human hybrid, because it's a character, due to the fact that I've given it a function. Tropes. Thank you, Eli. That's the word I was looking for. And play with them because they're things that help communicate and help people understand what it is you're visually trying to tell them. Just give them like this really big necklace. Because it's more fantasy oriented, I can kind of, culture combine and be inspired by certain ones and pull from them here and there, maybe like Asian cultures or European cultures, mix them together, make up my own hybrid of a world. They usually have like these really dark feathers, plumage on their heads. Will every book be to this extent? So that's the one thing about this too, is like I'll get into states and moments of like, oh, I want to draw that. And then I kind of like go through and do a quick sketch at times as well too. So people that purchase these books, it'll be kind of randomized as to like what you'll be getting. You don't get to select and choose. So keep that in mind. But it's kind of the fun of that, right? It's like a blind box. So again, there's a bunch of questions, and if I missed them, you can ask them again. Bald Ken is asking the sequence of themes and dynamic Bible sort of recommendations of what is better to start with, first plants and so on, or is it no particular order? There's no particular order, but I would say really going to things like your interests first do help because it retains the enthusiasm to have that curiosity to go find out. But you can also be a bit more disciplined by saying maybe I'll kind of like focus on organics in the first half in my training, and then the mechanics in the second half, or a hybrid stuff together. But there's no set order. Would I ever try making my own manga? In terms of the question, if you should, sure, absolutely. Will I? I mean, I've done comics, my own publishing. I enjoyed it. It's not going to be my like main sort of gig and interest of what I want to pursue, but I will keep doing it intermittently here and there. Sorry about that. I don't know. I don't know your profile name, but ask again. You're saying your question got skipped, but ask again. Because on YouTube, my screen, it's a little window like this big that's giving me the text and it scrolls through. I can only see like 4 messages. So by the time I get to the next one, it's already gone. So you're saying you're kind of overwhelmed by the amount of information in the dynamic Bible. How can I take it all of it perfectly? Well, there's no perfect. The best thing you can do is just start. That's the most important thing. Not about perfection, not about the outcome, not about the performance of it, but being able to just begin to start building a routine, building a habit, and being able to familiarize yourself to certain systems. And I would begin with the very beginning of the book, exercises to help build line confidence, and then slowly over time being able to acquire the nuances of things like either further render or detail or cross-hatching, and then also then applying it to the various subjects that could be interesting to you. You can start with the ones that are in the books, insects and vehicles of cars and stuff like that. But you can also focus on the subjects you like. Let's give them like wing, hands, and arms. Have some kind of staff. We'll kind of draw the upper torso in this case. Anthony is asking, when doing studies with references, what is your process? Do you look at the reference the whole time or look at it for a bit and then try drawing on your own? It's both. I would try certain exercises where I limit the amount of information, or I guess limit the amount of time I've looked at the reference and try to draw from the memory bank of that. And other times I had the reference always there constant with me to look at whenever I want to remind myself as to what was there informationally. So reference wise, the way you use that in process, you can jump back and forth to that and all of it is good. There's no proper way or better way. But as long as you're using reference, that is the way. Jeff is asking, any more copies of the Dynamite Bible on the way? Yes, that's where I'm at right now. We're at the bookstore called Stuart Ng Books. These copies at the moment will go on sale online at their bookstore with these original sketches available. And Liberdistry, the one based in Europe, will also get copies, I believe, very soon, this coming month. So look forward to that if you're based in international. But Stuart Ng ships international anywhere in the world. So. Are you planning to release an ebook at some point? Nope, I don't believe in ebooks. I like printed books. I like the smell of books. I like the tactile nature of books. So I get the fact that we'll mix it more available to people as an online thing, but that's just personal preference. But that's also not really my choice because it's the publisher going to choose what they do with the content. So I don't choose that. Even if I want to do an online book, they wouldn't do it. So Isaac, yeah, I understand being in Australia, the pricing of that will be quite high. So your other options would be go to look at Liberdistry, see what their price points are. If that would also be difficult, your only other bet is to be able to be patient. And maybe if you travel at some point and you go to some conventions and shows that I'm available at, you can purchase it live. If you plan to ever attend shows like Lightbox or Comic Cons and stuff like that into the future. But there's also potential chances where I'll be out on your side of the world, so I've done things like workshops in Australia before. So in those certain situations, you might be able to also find me locally. But that's where you, again, have to be patient because that's due to the circumstance of people being international. But, I appreciate the support and the interest of wanting to try and acquire the book. I wish it was easier. And shipping these days is getting tougher and tougher internationally on both sides of the world. So hopefully, it doesn't get worse. Mikoto is asking, do I ever try blind contouring? A little bit. I do something similar to it, but I call it the one line technique, which is basically to draw with a singular line throughout the entire sketch. I'm not necessarily blind per se, but I guess you're not necessarily literally saying blind, but talking more about being able to discover movements and details through the movement of the line work. But yeah, that kind of stuff I will do. And I do teach that. Eli, Taiwan was great. The weather was fantastic. It was rainy a little bit, but wasn't way too hot. It was more of a personal trip, seeing some, people, family, friends, and stuff like that. I'm not Taiwanese, but the lady is. So we went out for her family, and we were out there just relaxing, having a little vacation while I was still working. So working as best I could. You see these marks over here? This is from my hand. So my arm has a bunch of ink on it right now. So there's like these smudge marks on this. But when I have stuff like that happening, you might think, oh my God, these mess ups and these smudges. Like, oh, I can use those marks and recombine them into the sketch. So all of a sudden, at first, it's like there was a mistake. It's no longer a mistake because I can integrate it into the drawing, and now it's no longer there. So, second sketch done. We'll put that one aside. New book. Ahmed asking a question. To draw is to see is a quote and a title from my mentor, Norm. Norm was, my instructor for the dynamic sketching process. And what he taught, I'm going to stay with this idea of birds, was this concept of the idea of how you see is not just only through looking at the surface level of things with your eyes, but being able to perceive through the surface level and to be able to understand the underlying essence of form. So the quote of to draw is to see is that as we learn to draw through techniques and sketching through shape and form, we're able to see past the surface of things that we see every day and see the underlying principles and the essence of things of how to construct them, which allows us to see it through the form. And by being able to do so helps in being able to build stronger things like visual vocabulary, confidence in being able to sketch through observation, all those elements of things that I teach, right? So that's what that quote generally means. Some of you might know what this is. Let's go to some more questions. Rio Ray was asking, when drawing, do you plan out the skeleton system or structure in your head or think of it from the front to back? Or basic shapes? In this case, I'm not drawing the skeletal system. If I was focusing on the skeleton primarily, then I see it as more of shapes and lines, not details of anatomical information, unless I'm trying to do anatomical study. But I will still then use primitive shape and forms. Any recommendations on balancing black and white in drawings? Really using shadow shape, not worrying about detail and texture, but shadow, light and shadow. So designing shapes based on the observations of how light reacts to the surface and using contrasts to be able to help push things back and forward helps you organize the black and the whites. And then we play with line, which can be expressive, whether organized and static, flat and graphic, dynamic and flow. Then it's also things about like, economy of line. How much can I get away with? How much do I not need to draw? A flaw, not really a flaw, I guess, more of a habit that I've built up over time is over detailing. So being able to catch that, trying to detail less becomes an area of focus for me. Sappy's asking how many copies that Stuart Ng will have original sketches? All of them. Every single copy of the book that they have at their store will have original sketches. So we're going to sit here and draw every single one of them. So I might be here for a minute. Terrence, how many copies do we have?
Only 40.
40
Actually,
copies.
38
38 copies. Okay.
to confirm. We just sold one and we already had one committed.
Okay. So we just sold one right now. 38 copies is all we have online. See some more questions that we might have. Mr. Dashin, when will the delivery of the Diamond Bible happen to? That's going to be probably at the end of the year, October. Do I plan to experiment more with animation? That was more for fun, exercise. I mean, I can't see why not. But it'll be more of a back burner thing. So I like it. It's interesting. I've taken classes on animation, but with the amount of stuff I have on my plate, which is finishing this Dynamic Bible 2 and other books in my vicinity of future, it'll be some things I'll play with when I have free time. I don't know why, but I thought about a werewolf as I was talking with you guys. The idea of a werewolf popped in my brain. So things tend to happen in combination to each other. Uh, the brain is not necessarily talking. I don't have like an inner dialogue of discussing what should I draw next, but there are many ideas being thrown around. So my brain singularly will filter through a bunch of different sort of like ideas or concepts and things, and randomly sometimes it'll just say, "What about this?" And a werewolf came into my head. I can't explain to you why, but that is just the way my brain works. I'm going to scroll down a little bit more, so I apologize if again I'm missing questions. Am I planning to tour East Europe at some point? Well, typically, annually I would do a couple of international trips for things like workshops and conventions or, networking events and meets. But this year, nothing really came to fruition. So, if you guys have, let's say, known facilities or events, places that you turn to, go to, and you can recommend me, maybe they'll ask. So it's the only way really that tends to work is like kind of word of mouth, interest. And a lot of these shows, I have done many of them in the past, so some of them may not necessarily ask me to come back because I've done them so many times already. For example, like the Promised Land in Poland, I've done that like 4 times already. There was that trip last year, which was the one in Germany for We Are Playgrounds. That was a fun one, but it's like if I do it once, will they call back? Most likely not. But if there are other events that are out there that you guys are attending and you're interested in having me there, all you got to do is let them know. So I don't necessarily actively reach out to those people and say like, "Hey, do you need somebody to have come by?" It's all based on if they ask because I do it purely more based on interest for what they need. Because I'm already so busy with what I do. It's not like I actually need to do it. But this year, nothing's really been planned. So I won't be in Eastern Europe. I won't. I was supposed to be in Paris at the beginning of this year, but then the Altadena fires happened, so I had to cancel that trip. That was the only international thing I had kind of planned. I have a couple of domestic stuff coming up, which is the Comic Con San Diego, then of course New York, and then Lightbox Expo. Michael's asking, hope the trip was good. Thank you. Appreciate that. I've been struggling with building up the courage to draw in public, but I see the necessity of doing it. Any tips on getting out of your shell and just a start? I think the best thing to do, which is easy for me to say, but difficult for maybe for you to act on, is not actually the activity of drawing in public, but finding an environment that's comforting to do so, that enables it. So what does that mean? Finding friends, people to sketch with each other at like a zoo or a cafe. If you're by yourself and you went to some place, let's say again, it's like a museum or a zoo or something like that, there's a little bit of a sense of pressure and you get a little bit awkward and you don't want people looking at you. So you get very kind of sort of turtle shelled, you know? But if you have others around you that are doing the same activity, you have a bit more of a set of numbers of people around you that are doing it. So you don't really feel as awkward or singular to that. So I think working with others to do so, I think is one of the better ways to kind of pursue that, sketching kind of in public. So find others if you can, you know, others that are doing the same thing that you are, drawing, sketching, training, and find moments of time to be able to get together. And so for me, that was a huge component from this class of dynamic sketching where we went out together as a classroom. We went out together as groups. And even when the class was done, me and my friends went back to the location and we would sketch more. See if there's more questions. And Valeria was asking, would I ever do workshops in Europe? And again, yeah, I've done quite a few of them. But again, this year, we don't really have I don't have anything really planned out just yet. But if something changes, if I get invites or, you know, all of a sudden some coordinator reaches out to me saying we need somebody, then I'll announce it on my Instagram usually. So for sure, I would post about it. If you guys are joining me live right now, what you can be doing is hopefully sketching with me. Today, at the moment, just for those of you that are joining me for or just hopped on, we are at the Stuart Ng Bookstore. This is in Torrance, and I'm sketching live here right now, looking at or sketching inside the Dynamic Bible books. So we have a bunch of copies over here on the left. So I'm just sketching to get these done. So I figured I would just stream it live. Werewolf. Okay, let's go to another one. So I'm going to be scrolling down quite a bit because there was a lot of messages. I'm reading really old chat. So I'm going to go back to the bottom to a live chat. And so a bunch of the questions I may have missed, you will have to probably answer or ask again. So Great Eagle's asking, how do I improve with values? It's the fundamental I struggle with most, usually when drawing foliage. Well, think of it kind of like this. Foliage is all based on shape, primitives, but being able to cluster is kind of the key. Big shape language, not the individual leaves and the individual, you know, strand of grass, but the grouping and the clustering. So if it was a tree, big shape. So here's a bunch of leaves, and we'll push then the dark and the lights, things that are behind, we'll push it down. shadow shape. Things that are on top, this is where we'll place in minor details. Then we can use line work to show expressiveness of movement, variances in terms of details, variance in terms of kinds of like plants that are out there. Maybe there's like a dead trunk of wood. Sorry, it's off a screen. Then we have texture, grain. And same thing, line work. Finding different ways to be able to hatch. And then pushing the dark and lights. And now that I have these plant clusters here, let's put something behind that. Maybe a dinosaur. So, did I intend to draw this animal from the beginning? I did not. I started with the plant based on the question that was asked. How do I draw foliage? Well, here's some plants. And then I thought, okay, what could be behind it? I make a choice. I commit to it. Well, how do I know what that looks like? Experience, purely. I've drawn countless amount of dinosaurs in my own iterations from different poses and angles and, making, obviously it's not scientifically accurate anatomically because I'm not trying to plan out the skeletal structure here, but I'm still using known anatomical information that I've studied from to be able to indicate this idea visually to you. And we'll put another plant over here. Different sort of ferns or big palms. And we're just making stuff up. Joe's asking, how do I practice the dynamic Bible further past rotating and copying the content? Varying the subject matter, right? Building more efficiency, stronger visual library, which is being able to repeat the process over and over again so you can draw more from memory. So it's not just about turning the form, but being able to actually then draw from memory out of your own head. But then from there, the confidence of being able to build multiple variants of subject matter, organically, mechanically, whatever the case might be. Observation, drawing live, finding situations of opportunities to study things in real life, and how can you then, in the immediate moment, make decisions to capture that right there and right then. Then it goes into the application of producing illustrations, comics, designs. Those are the next steps. Ken's asking, how much time have I spent most with a single piece? Well, during my college days, I would spend days upon days, hundreds of hours on painting sometimes. But I don't really do that today. So in training mode, I would spend quite an exorbitant amount of time on things of excess to be able to understand how to do it. But typically in a sketch like this one here, I mean, the most maximum I'll probably spend is a 2-day period, which each session of sketching lasting up to 5-6 hours at the most. And that's if I was doing some sort of like large illustration. For these sort of like illustrations or sketches inside of a book like this one, it'd be a single day, no matter what. Sorry, just concentrating a little bit and finishing this one up so we can get to the next book. We got a whole stack to go through, so I can't dilly-dally too much on a single piece. I might switch up the pen though, because this one takes a minute to dry. So we're gonna switch it over to, I think what I'll use is maybe this one here. This is more of a water-based brush pen, so we'll see how it goes. Judge is asking, do you have any tips on posting on Instagram? I struggle with letting yourself have fun and tend to become a bit a perfectionist about it. So it's not really so much about the social media that becomes the issue. It's more about, letting go and being able to just share what you're trying to do. So when it comes to social media, just think of it that way. Don't take it so seriously. It's not some sort of platform to make money off of. I know you look at things online and see all the people that have millions of followers and that can make a business or a brand out of it, but it doesn't start that way. And especially as an independent artist. I mean, if you have the intent of building a company and a brand, sure, that's one thing. But as an independent producing your own things, you purely use social media to just share socially, visually, to things you do day to day. From the pictures that you take, from the sketches that you do, to the travels that you have. That's all it comes down to. It's just the idea of enjoying sharing to others. And that could be sharing outcomes or your process or your interests and curiosities and things you discover or things you don't like. And through that, you draw an audience of people that follow that because they're interested in the things that you're interested in. So it's got to go purely more to, again, the ideas of interest and the enthusiasm, the things that you have in life, and less about your performance of something to put it out there as a show to think that, hey, I can now impress others. And by doing so, I can get quote unquote Instagram famous or something like that. If you go with that kind of mentality, it's not going to work. Because most of the times in those situations, usually they're fake, right? Isaac is asking, can I potentially call the store you are in to find out if they could hold on to a book until you can purchase it? You can try. Do I use bird studies when drawing dinosaurs? A lot of times, yes. Especially theropods. Milan, the brush pen I'm using right now is one that is made by, it's a Korean brand, and the website's called koreawhite.com. That's literally what it says on the pen. This was a gift from my cousin, so I actually don't know what this pen is. It's one that he uses all the time as a tattoo artist. So he said, oh, you should try this one out. So that's why I have it now. Has there ever been a manga artist that has inspired you? If so, who and why? I'll just go one. That's going to be Inoue, Takehiko, Vagabond, Slam Dunk. Vagabond specifically is such an amazing comic. So when I was making my own comic book, I looked at that primarily. Let's go back to something a little bit more straightforward again. Animal stuff I like. We're sticking with this theme of animals right now. Let's go to like a head study again. We'll put it over here. I'm gonna go through some of the chat now. Cosmos is asking, can you learn to draw everything by drawing everything? Well, I mean, technically, I guess based on that comment or question, of course, you probably could. If you looked at everything and studied it down to some degree of level, then there's no reason why you wouldn't be able to draw it. Can we use this system to be able to analyze and problem solve the very many things and subjects that are out there? I would say so, yes. That's the whole kind of point of the sketching technique that I promote, because I myself have huge amount of interest in various subject matter, from wildlife to mechanical things and other stuff. people tend to kind of like, singularize or have a emphasis of a technique towards one specific thing, but this is a universal technique. It's about being able to, again, interpret, to record data, and build confidence towards it. So, yeah, simply the answer is yes. Spencer, we'll come back to the volume two stuff again in just a moment. Ken's then asking, how would the approach to starting figure drawing would go about? Well, that's going to go into things like classes, finding the typical books of standards of practice that many people use in education. I just read in the chat people talking about things like Bridgman and Loomis or the Riley technique or whatever the case is. All those things are good. There can be dogmas of thought in education a lot of times, but I think it's important just to expose yourself to all of it and then make it your curated sort of interests of what you end up citing to based on practice alone. But yeah, that's really the best way to begin is just going through the documented books and the various sort of content that's out there printed and peruse through it. From there, you do master copies, and from there, you can also then go to live studies. And the live studies can be something more, kind of set up in a workshop, or you can do live in things like cafes and actual people in a natural setting. From there, things like story creation, design can be also implemented based on your interests of what type of industry or focus of, what we do you want to go towards. This sort of mark making comes more from kind of the hatching techniques you'll see a lot of the European artists will do. And that's, a combination for me of interests of things like Asian artists of manga and Japanese to Korean to also then European artists and how they do things like hatching and building shape and line movements. So the more you analyze, the various amount of people that are out there over, decades of time, for me, it started very young. You start to kind of curate these things based on observations of practice, and it becomes in a tool you implement for yourself. Okay, let's go to a new book. I'm looking at the most current chat right now. What warm-up would you recommend before you start sketching? In the book itself, we talk a lot about the exercises of things like line movement, things like basic lines to also circles and ellipses, things like this. And this is about being able to warm up your hand, muscle memory, making sure things like your joints are kind of like, getting revved up, if anything else, to start pushing into time, being able to study from the actual subjects you go for. But the warm-ups would be based on this first portion of the book. Basic line and shapes to also then building form, whether it's like combination of forms to also stacking, subtracting, form interlocking, that sort of stuff. But this first quarter of it is all that information, exercises. Eli's asking an interesting question, which is you kind of get hung up on the sheer number of ways to depict something. For example, like human figure. Do you have any advice on trusting your instinct more and picking a lane? Time is really a factor. I think most instructors will just tell you that, right? Letting it marinate, letting it mature over time, having your own decisions being made through practice. You can't rush that, right? Being able to rely upon your instincts and your gut feeling of what you prefer and preference of an approach to an idea of how to construct stuff is simply that, So there's no answer. There is no, set manner or way that's proper. I think naturally through your own activity and pursuit, it will become to light, you know. Jim was asking, do I have any hand exercises or stretches? I would typically use a lot of these sort of like hand exercise stuff. You know, you would see the power grip ones, the springs, even like the kind of gyro sphere that you would use to kind of like rotate and spin. That can really strengthen your forearm. But in terms of the hand, really the areas in which you want to exercise a lot is looseness in the joints of the knuckles and also in the area of the wrist down into the muscles of the forearm. So the connective tissue is probably one of the more important parts. Flexibility is going to really help a lot. So being able to actually, obviously take a lot of breaks is going to be one of the main factors. Because when you're holding the pen, you're in a stationary state for so long, you can generate things like stiffness and inflammation. So the idea of blood flow, movement is really important. So I would say a stint of maybe like an hour or two drawing, you stop. And then from there, you shake it off. Take the pen literally away from your hand and start moving it, get the blood flow going, stretch it, use those sort of like devices at times as well too. And it's about being able to create opposition to movement, right? So whether it's one way, the opposite way, that sort of thing. Typically for me, I don't do as much of those because I would usually work them out in things like gyms. So that gets me warmed up. But before the actual drawings, especially when you're just starting out, taking more breaks is actually more important than anything else. Just making sure that your hand has a chance to be able to decompress and let that blood flow go. Let's go into another sketch here. I'm going to combine it with a different pen as well. Let's try this one. Somebody had mentioned an owl. So I'm sketching a characterized owl. Someone says an elephant. You can try that one next. Josie's asking, what's the best way to start learning anatomy? Well, if you've already feel confident about building shape and form, then yes, I would move. I would say moving into anatomy is a good thing, and you would start with the basics: skeletal structure first, then into the musculature systems. But that's where books become critical. The book that we use during Art Center days is a book called The Anatomy for Artists, and it was produced by an artist named Jano Barskay, Jeno Barskay, Barcay, I believe. But that was the book that we looked at, and we would do studies from them, copies. There were illustrations, not images, or pictures, that is, photographs. So looking at his illustrations, we would actually copy them directly one to one. And then we would label everything on a more medical level. In the past, when I was a student, I've also done things like cadaver studies. I've studied dead bodies. We would do dissections and we would look at the internal portions of the body, the ligaments, the muscles, internal organs, and skeletal structure on, deceased people. I don't know how much of that is really done these days, but back when I was in school, this is 20 years ago, we would visit morgues and medical centers, and they would allow us to study. Is there a benefit to that? I think there is benefit to it. To be able to actually interact and visibly see in three dimensions helps. But is it crucial in your development that it needs to be done to help you improve that dramatically more? No, I think it's just a slight benefit. There's obviously a nice sort of like informational thing you can gather from that, but it doesn't dictate your success and your understanding of the subject matter. So I'm certainly not saying that you should be pursuing those sort of like experiences, which they're not going to be so available publicly. Have I ever drawn on a wall like how Kim Jong-il used to? Well, all the time, actually. I was actually playing with a really large piece of paper the other day on this mulberry paper. I'm drawing up a scene, but these are things I would do even when this was like, I think the biggest piece I did earlier on was like 2010. I did this giant 10-foot by 30-foot wall piece of paper, and it was a giant scene with Godzilla. But I've been drawing with straight ink because of the dynamic sketching process since I was a young student. Okay, let's move on to something else. Griselda Duarte is asking, can I recommend a study regimen to build the visual library? Because there are a lot of things to learn how to draw and somewhat daunting. Any system? Well, that's what this is. The dynamic Bible and dynamic sketching methods are about building visual library, and it's about really repetition. Repetition, being able to repeat down to the forms, slowly building to the details, and only through repetition can you start to curate the know-how of how to approach it step by step, of how to actually sketch that thing, but also then be able to turn it and draw it from the imagination and use it for creative outlets. But that's where being in a classroom helps tremendously, because in a classroom situation, now you're also required to hit a deadline. You have other people that are watching what you do. There's feedback potentially in place. As the instructor gives you feedback, you're able to also kind of go back and forth to understand what you can adjust and adapt to. So those are some of the factors in what you need to do. But as a personal regimen, I mean, obviously having these sort of books help. Going online, looking at YouTube videos, watching stuff like this can be resourceful. But on your own, you have a ceiling. And that ceiling can be hit fairly quickly. And once you hit that, you don't really know where else to go to break past that plateau. And it only can be done in a community of education. So I think that's really going to be the best bet. But on your own, it comes back down to this idea of just investing a lot of time to repeat over and over and over again, right? I'm going to go back to the chat window real quickly to see what you guys are also talking about. Sorry, I need to kind of scroll down a little bit because people are asking a bunch, but I can't hit every single one of them. So I do appreciate your guys' patience and being able to ask certain questions again, because I can't go through all of them. So is the Dynamic Bible cover gold plated? Well, there's gold foil for the text and logo. Let me know if you have a question also.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's just so funny because like I saw you drawing this horse.
Yeah.
And there was something going around where it's like, draw a horse from your mind.
Yeah.
Do it right now. And I'm just looking at this and I'm going like, well, there it is.
It's usually how it goes. Yeah, absolutely. But that's the way it works in my own brain as well too. My brain would tell me, draw this. I just kind of just draw it.
Yeah.
But it's these things that I'm drawing are based on this idea of it's the interpretation of those things. You know, so you can do a photocopy and look at photographs and draw it one to one, but as you study them, you interpret that information through shape and form, and it becomes this amalgamation of data in which you're able to play with, which is somewhat stylized then to some degree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I like that because interpretation is like, it's just basically, yeah, what you said, style.
Yeah.
And it's the fact of the matter is that reference isn't necessarily a bad thing.
Oh, absolutely not. It's a good thing.
Because it's all about learning and processing how things are shaped
Yes.
and moved. And if you can just take that information and make it something your own, I think that's great.
That's the point of what we're trying to do here. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, this is fantastic. So,
Oh, absolutely. I'm glad you stopped by.
yeah. My God. Well, all the best. Thank you so
Oh,
much.
thank you. Appreciate it. We do have people in the store walking around as well, so you guys will probably hear me talking to people every now and again. Shy Guy is asking, do you think construction can become sort of a crutch? I want to start moving away from the personal sketches, but the results are very inconsistent. It's an interesting question to me because it's very loaded to me. And I could spend potentially hours talking about that concept of systems and constructs and becoming dependent on them. For me, it's not so much on the dependency on the construction process, but what it also is it's been so built in, or I guess, what's the best word? Integrated into my process and flow, that it's no longer even a thought process. It becomes automatic. And that automatic approach there, that can have certain downsides, which is you tend to be very repetitive in the sort of like visual expression that you do. There's no allowance for you to be able to question this line, this shape, this form. These are on the more advancements of things and things that I'm pursuing today in my own sort of like training, which is that I'm overtrained. I can show you how to construct and break these down like that, very clearly, simply, quickly. And there's benefit to that because it helps nurture things like visual library, speed and efficiency, confidence in your line of drawing, turning form, and drawing many, many variant subject matters. But the problem, again, goes into this idea of dependency towards it. But a bigger issue for me, which is becoming robotic. It becomes very sort of like defined as to the way you only do things, and there's no way to break that. So what I'm trying to find a way to do now is to break that education, break that sort of like pattern that's set within me, and to unlearn what I've learned is massively difficult. So it doesn't mean that I would suggest you don't learn these systems. The only way you have a context of what you feel like is starting to happen as this repetitive sort of like, momentum that you move forward in as you mature is to be able to have those systems in place. And then when you're presented with that awareness of like, well, what do I now do in this situation? Do I keep using it or do I break it? Is based on then your maturity through it. So that's kind of the way it works for, I think, all artists. You come to that sort of fork in the road where you realize, hey, I just tend to do the same things over and over again, but not because I don't like it, but because I'm no longer in control. It is now automated by my hand. And there's no more thought process behind how I can alternate my expression to the line. So, anyways. Somebody said dragon. But the dependency on it, especially at the early stages of your training, that I wouldn't worry so much about. I think the turning to those reliances of constructive processes are going to nurture, your confidence in being able to pursue the unknown visual things that you may encounter into the future. Zhao is asking, should you treat studies, practice drawings as finished pieces? I know you said it's important not to separate practice from real work. Well, define the wording of finished piece to begin with. What does that actually mean for you? What is a finished piece? How do you know what that even is? What would I suggest? Well, as you analyze other people's work, you can see that that could be defined as a finished piece because one, the application, you see it in a printed sort of example. It's in a book. It's a cover of a book. So you can rely on the understanding that that is an actual, client paid job sort of situation, and that piece had to be polished to be able to be printable in that product that you're trying to make. So if you're trying to make a product or a finished illustration to be sold, well then, the way you would treat that is as such, because the intention of knowing what it's applied to, you're very clear on. But if I'm also clear to say that I am trying to study, does that mean that the study that I'm trying to do should lack detail? Should it be kept to just a constructive process? Is it only a thumbnail? No, I think a sketch or a study can have just as much detail of a illustration or a rendered piece, but because I know what I'm trying to do with it, which is to understand the approach, the method, the visual outcome, it is a practice. I know that it will not be used to be sold. It's not being used as a hired thing. It is my personal pursuit to understand. So the visual outcome in terms of finish quality is not so dependent upon the level of polish or nuance or clarity or cleanness of that thing, more of the intention of what is it being applied to and what is my intention of mine. A crow with a gothic cross collar. We'll try maybe playing with that. Gino's asking, can you use any type of paper with pen, ink, or pencil, and would your drawing be what you want it to be? I mean, basically, you have to kind of be careful with that wording for in terms of what I'm trying to produce. Would it come out to be what I want it to be? That's never really a thought in my mind. It's like I don't have a direct picture of this dragon in my head, so it's not supposed to be anything based on my mind. I have an idea of what the dragon concept is. It's an animal, it's got horns, but it's not really visual information. It's based on then the context of lore and mythology or wildlife and biology stuff that I've seen. And then I can visually concoct it the way I want to on the go. So there's no set outcome, set expectation as to what it needs to achieve. Now, of course, you can have those sort of intents on design, and you would pursue the various sort of like explorations to kind of come to the best conclusion on that. But as a single sketch over here, there's no thought of like it needs to be this set thing. So then that relieves the pressure, and I can now just sketch to just have fun, because this is just a sketch to put in a book for pure fun. I'm not being hired to do this. This is stuff I'm doing based on a request from the store saying, hey, would you come and sign these books? Sure. So it's not extra money for me. So because that's the case, I'm going to just come in here to sketch for purely entertainment purposes, which is why I'm going to be able to hang out with you guys and sketch online and not have this intent of like, oh, this has to be something now, right? Mike is asking clothing style. Where do I get my inspiration? A lot of times, very much driven by my environment, of course. So I kind of have two sort of like worlds of, let's say, interest in culture when it comes to clothing. It's not so much like a fashion oriented thing, so I'm not looking for high end brands and trying to, dress in a certain way for me, it's purely just what I just like, what's comfortable. So I highly get influenced by the Western wear because I would travel so much, looking around the West, and being with my friend Manny and being able to kind of go to these different states that are more outdoors, and that kind of wear suits that environment. And I think it just feels comfortable. But I think a lot of it is also just pure interest towards in the culture of it, the history of it, that sort of thing as well too. That's a lot of times what it's driven by: people, the environment, and then of course the culture of things. Eli's asking, do you have any advice on trusting your creative instinct? In the beginning, you'll doubt yourself endlessly, as a student. Whether you have the best original idea, is your not just the quality of the work, but in terms of the I guess the competitiveness of it to other people, is it as strong? On the creative side, it's going to be constantly in doubt to you because you always think that, well, it's been done before, it could be better, and that sort of thing. And so how do you kind of like overcome that sort of mentality? So I'm trying to go back to your question again. I lost the question. I don't know where it went. Oh, there it is. So yeah, trusting the creative instinct. I think again that goes back into, for me, it was reinforced by having a kind of creative reinforcement of people around me. It's having that sort of like energy always being fed to you. And in one way, you can do it by receiving that sort of creative inspiration by looking at things like books and comics and stories and whatnot. But for me, being surrounded by creative forces, individuals that I thought were highly skilled in what they did, even at the student level. As students, we can see each other as friends, but I would see their skills and be like, wow, that person can do this really well. So you want to surround yourself with individuals that are, in like-mindedness, but also on skills higher than you. And what that does, then it creates that sort of like pressure sort of environment, which is a good thing for me. And I think in general too, it's a pressure cooking environment that puts you in a situation to be able to actively pursue that. So then through the practice and activity of doing so, you're able to have many, many sort of like visual outcomes, which is simply the exercise and the practice of it, but as content to be able to look back on and be like, well, this direction, that direction, I like this and that. And you start to curate, things like your creative decisions and choices. Great Eagles mentioning art is a very mental thing. I would say it's a large portion of it. I think within that percentage wise, I think it's like 80 to 90% of it is mental. But that physical part, that last remaining, let's say 10 to 20%, is an important factor. You got to be able to control these, tools in a manner to equate to what you're either seeing or wanting to capture. Maybe that ratio of percentage is off a little bit here. So maybe it's more like a 60-40, 60% mental, 40% physical. Let's move on from this dragon. Let's go to something else. Just getting this one started a little bit. Let's go back to the chat. Speedmaster was mentioning this idea, that Hokusai book that I brought up, and yeah, that's a hard one to find. You can probably find it on eBay. It's probably the best place to look for it. It's a vintage book, from like the 70s and whatnot. You'll find older copies as well too, but you won't find a lot of reprints of it, unfortunately. And it's the Hokusai mangas. Joey, in terms of the intro emails for the next round of classes coming up, I have not sent them just yet. I'm hoping to send them by this coming Monday or this weekend. So look for it to come real soon. The reason why I usually kind of like hold off on that is because it's still registering. So if I send out the welcome email and we have new registers, they don't get attached to it. So I kind of wait till the last week or so until I send those out. Antonio is asking, how would I apply my method to oil painting, specifically without an underdrawing, drawing with thinned out oil paint with linseed or Gamsol? So how I would apply it is understanding form, right? Now with painting, it's the idea of light and shadow. Understanding light helps you understand volume, but I would still capture a visual sort of like language of form using light and shadow, but making sure that is designed, specifically in a manner where I can control 3 dimensions using that aspect. So dynamic sketching is the idea of interpreting form language, whereas with painting, it's about understanding light language. So by integrating those two things together, whether as a underlay, which you're not trying to do, but directly into the painting, I would still obviously use in that manner. Maybe some beads over here. Playing with this neck piece, encrusted maybe with like jewels or something. Haru is asking, if you were to present on one sheet of paper what the art of drawing is to you, what would you draw? It's a tough question. Is it somewhat philosophical to a degree, I would say, but if I was to present on a single sheet what the art of drawing is, it kind of depends for me and I don't want to almost say this because I don't want to define it as a certain way of how it should be done. Because in the art of drawing, we mentioned this earlier, people said it earlier, which is it's such a mental aspect of what we do. And I probably actually would use that one line technique, which is about being able to have an underlying foundation of a system that you've learned and using that to guide your hand, but not strictly being tied to it and being able to break that routine to flow and move and adapt in the way you can naturally in the immediate moment. So it's irregardless of subject matter, and it's more based on the combination of known systems and being able to be aware of those systems to break them. So I would use whatever subject it's supposed to be, an animal, a person, vehicle, and use more of that singular line approach that shows constructiveness, but also free flowedness. Dorian's asking, where can you get a signed copy? Well, right now we're at the Stuart Ng Bookstore. So if you go to their website, stuartngbooks.com, these books will go up there hopefully in the coming week. So they're not available right now on the website because I'm signing them at the moment. So after I'm done, look for it at the upcoming week and they should be up there soon. So I still have a stack of books assigned. We got about a total of 38 books, and I've done maybe about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe about 8. I don't know exactly how many. So we still have quite a few more to do. At some point, I'm probably going to have to start picking it up a little bit. I can't stay here forever. So we're going to have to probably draw a little bit faster, a little bit more simple, which doesn't necessarily mean lower quality. It just means being a little bit more aware of what I'm trying to do. And we got a donation here. Thank you so much, Eli. I appreciate that. Supporting this channel and the live streams that I do really helps. It keeps me active, keeps me wanting to come back. So the YouTube community, YouTube environment has always been a very positive thing so far up to this point. Instagram is kind of more of a place that I just kind of keep stable, and it's not really a growth point anymore. But YouTube definitely has been an awesome platform. I definitely still want to, and I want to continue growing it as much as possible. But at this moment in time, as most of you know, it becomes a thing where I jump on once a month, twice a month, that sort of thing. But it'll continue to happen from this point on. And this sort of like live stream, dual sketching sort of, experience, I'm sure is not that common. I'm sure there's individuals out there that also do what I'm doing right now. But to the extent of how much kind of back and forth that we do, you're probably not going to find it regularly, out there. So take advantage of the time that you have with me. Question is, do you often scan sketches and finish digitally as a painting? Sometimes. It dependent upon, again, what the intention of that piece is for. If it's supposed to be, let's say, a comic book, which I've done. I've done that, which I would do traditional illustrations, black and white, ink, and then I would scan that high resolution and I would paint it digitally on Photoshop. But I would make that decision early on as to like how I want to approach the process of making those pages or illustration pieces. Sometimes I would want to do, a watercolor piece or a traditional piece. Other times I want to do a digital one. If it's client work for design, a lot of times I'm strictly digital because of the quickness of the pace and the changes that need to happen. Digital is always going to be a lot more friendly. But for a lot of personal work, it does tend to be a lot more traditional. There we go.
That might be the one.
Suggestion on what you can draw is an insect humanoid mutation. Okay, let's try something like that. I love rhino beetles. Big eye over here. Crazy mouth parts with the antennas. Kind of have a small head that's encased by their mid-thorax section, which will house on this upper part. We're going to humanize it or make a humanoid version of it. And we use darks and shadow shapes to kind of disguise the level of detail. It makes it feel more intricate, where you can still draw less. inspired by the rhino beetle or the Hercules beetle. And for me, this is also derived from the many inspirations of, comics and mangas and creatures that I've seen over time. Specifically, one of the main ones I love looking at is, especially on this side of things, is going to be the Guyver. Bio Booster Armor, the Guyver. Love the design work in that manga. The live action movies by Steve Wang is also really amazing. Some of my favorite design work. Bunch of thorns, side of the shoulder here. And I'll put an arm right here across just to kind of like basically frame it. So upper arm here, big sort of like forearm coming down this direction. And this will cut across, which then stops the illustration, so it frames the piece. Blackberry is asking, you're moving out to drawing mechanical stuff. Any recommendations on what process to use to help break them down? Well, again, primitive forms helps the most. What are the primitive forms? Cubes, spheres, cylinders, pyramids, cones, cylinders, that sort of stuff. It's not about the mechanical detail. It's still about more the functions of the bigger forms first, and then finding ways of indicating the small intricate details in between those spaces. But of course, analyzing real world stuff, whether it's like vehicles or construction vehicles to robots and whatnot, is really what you should turn to. So if you're saying, I want to design mechs, well then, looking at real machinery helps a lot. Are you trying to engineer and design that stuff? There's going to be a level of functionality that has to come through, right? And this is where studying things like articulation of joints, movement of things, even biologically. What are the various joints that we have? Actually, in this new Dynamic Bible 2 stuff, there's a page here which I do go into it. So this section right here is about the various sort of like joint explorations. Things like hinge joint, ball socket, plane, ellipsoid, saddle. These are the various joints you'll find in bone structure. But this sort of joint articulation can be then interpreted into a mechanized version of it. So once you understand the idea of joint articulation, you use big form, which is stylized or designed in a more aesthetic manner, that can give you the kind of the building blocks of mech design. And then we look at real nature, things like insects and animals, humans even, which you can then also mechanize to make them interesting as a visual form, because we like natural things a lot of times. So I can take this insect-inspired humanoid and mechanize this also. In a lot of ways, insects are nature's robots. So it really kind of like parallels well. Jason, how's it going, man? Hope you're doing well. So I'm going to scroll all the way back down to the chat. I may have missed a bunch of questions there again, so keep asking away. I'll try to catch them when I can. If I miss it, I apologize. Is anybody into the NBA? Could somebody update me as to who won this first game that played, which was the Milwaukee Bucks and the Indianapolis Pacers? Who won? I was watching it earlier, then I stopped watching because I was going to go live with you guys. Uh, I like basketball. I like watching it, but the playoffs are right now, so I'm not trying to break away to go watch the games at the moment. But maybe somebody can update me. How's it going on, man? Welcome. Yeah, the Guyver movies are awesome. The ones that are live action. The first one was very campy. It's got Mark Hamill in it, and I liked it. I saw that very young in like the '90s. But the second one is way more, I would say, faithful to more the manga styling of things, where the first one was trying to be more like a serious, like creature sci-fi thing. It was inspired by the mangas, but I would say it, doesn't really follow it very faithfully. And of course, it was a bit of a low budget movie, but the second one I thought was really well stylized. The choreography and the fights are really great. And in my youth in the '90s, I was a huge, Hong Kong movie fan. So I had watched so much martial art action films that I had an eye for things like choreography and fight sequences that I really found aesthetically pleasing. Of course, everybody knows of Yun Wo Ping, and everyone knows him mainly because of the Matrix stuff. But when he was doing a lot of his Hong Kong films, they did some amazing choreography. But that second film, MacGyver 2, that was really well done. That's what I thought. Okay, Patience one. Thank you for the update. I know there's a bunch of other games going on right now, but I'll go watch those later on. I was curious about the Bucks ones because I would like to have the Bucks actually win. So I'm not surprised they lost this first round, but hopefully the next round Dame will come back. Let's just finish up the hand over here. We'll call this one done real soon. The crazy insectoid hands. And I'm not sure exactly how, we've been going about an hour and 40. So I'm probably going to go for about another, let's say like 30, 40 minutes. And at some point we are going to end the live stream because I'm going to go through and hammer away all these live sketches at the store. But we'll still sketch a few of these more for the next 40 minutes to an hour. Try to get as many as I can done. But at some point we will be exiting and I'm going to just focus on finishing the sketches. The question I saw earlier from Clara, you recently got into book, so I wanted to read this because you mentioned bookbinding. So you got into bookbinding and making your own sketchbooks, and it's a lot of fun. Is there any type of paper you think would be fun to use to make one? So, great question, and I really like talking about crafts of things, especially bookmaking. I think is really, really interesting. And the reason why is because back when I would teach at Art Center, the college here in Pasadena, and I taught dynamic sketching, which is this book. All students that went into my classes had to produce a final book. So all the sketches they would produce as homework, they would scan it, clean it up, curate it, and print it into a final book they would submit for a grade in my class. And those books usually had to be handmade. So they would print it and they would hand bind it, that sort of stuff. And some of them can also then go to a book binding place and do it for them. I didn't mind that, but a lot of them were also interested in binding their own books. And this skill, I think, is actually quite resourceful and handy, especially as an independent artist. Maybe not necessarily the idea of book binding, which I think is really good, but just generally the idea of book layout. Because as an independent, this idea of pursuing things like making your own comic, producing your own sketchbooks, I'm saying collections of your work, doing conventions and shows, doing festivals and whatnot, I think is a very proper route most independent artists should take. You guys can understand right now the nature of the industry being very rocky at the moment. And there's a lot of professionals out there that sit and just don't know what to do. Let's say they've been working in the industry for like 15, 20 years and they now leave that job and they feel like, well, I don't really have the following anymore because I didn't push my social media, and they don't have other skills because they've been only working in production and they have nothing else to show for it. So then what do you do? It's like, I can't seem to find my next job. It's all dried up. Now you're independent. So you should just be able to start producing your own thing while you're maybe even still looking for the next job coming up, maybe some kind of industry thing, whatever the case is. But that shouldn't stop you from creating, shouldn't stop you from producing your own products. So if you're an industry person right now and you can't find work, my suggestion to you is make products, make books, comics, art books, sketchbooks, things printed of your work. Now, Claire is asking about making a sketchbook that's, empty that you would sketch in. In terms of paper, I think what would be really cool to see is more handmade paper being used. So things like what I really like is mulberry paper. And you can find that at a really cool place I found online called Blue Heron Arts. And you can find stacks of that book. It's really thin. You can find thicker versions of that paper as well too. But mulberry paper I find to be really fascinating. It just behaves uniquely to me. So I really like the way it kind of like feels and the way it handles ink. That as a sketchbook I think would be really cool. Mulberry paper. And Jimbo Slice, thank you for the great donation. I appreciate that. And thanks for hanging out. When you think humanoid beetle, do you picture the skeletal system or silhouette? More of shapes, individual component of shapes, head to torso to arms. Which shape goes to form? So Amanda's asking the question of my quote, which is think before you create, don't think while you're creating. What does that kind of mean? Usually what I mean by that is if there's a lot of things in your mind that you're processing as you are sketching. Let's say right now I want to sketch, let's do something like machinery based. Some kind of like, I have a artist friend, Emerson, who does the tank heads. I'll do something like that, like a machinery tank head humanoid mech. There's so many thoughts in your head. What does a tank look like? What kind of tank I'm going to draw, right? What time era does it come from? What's the function of it? How does the mech joints work? There's so much detail to process. As you're thinking about it and you're trying to draw it, you're going to get lost. So the idea is to prep before by researching, analyzing, studying sketch work of that subject matter, curating all that information, which is your thinking process, and then start acting in the creative process, which now I don't have to think anymore. I just do. That's what that comment usually is. Dorian's asking, how do you go about learning shape design as a self-taught artist? Looking at design work that you find very aesthetically pleasing. So you have to build a taste to things. And how to build a taste towards a style is consuming a lot of visual things. Comics and artwork and, varying degrees of like properties and brands and stuff that either you like or even things that you find very curious or even outside your realm of understanding. And the more you visually gather stuff, you can begin to start to either categorize or be able to create a hierarchy of things that you find to be very appealing shape-wise and things you feel like, well, it's not really my kind of forte. So we're just starting this one off right now just to establish a few marks and details. We'll go back to some other questions here in just a moment. This is the cannon with that front cowl right here. This is the part that would actually move up and down. And I'll loosely base this off of the Sherman tank. loosely, meaning that I can have the opportunity to be able to play with it and, push it in terms of design and look in varying ways. Let's push the shoulder side here. I have no idea exactly what this thing's going to look like. So I'm exploring it as I go about things. Am I thinking right now? I'm more making decisions. So yes, it's thinking, but I'm not trying to make, I'm not going into my memory of trying to figure out what stuff looks like. I'm going to an opportunity like, well, there's an arm here. And I'm making choices on like, I just want to shape as like a cube or cylinder or something like that. And certain details are being made up or curated from things that I've seen before. But they're very reactionary, and they're based on then the experiences of things that I've built up to this point. But I'm not trying to sit here and picture in my mind exactly what all this detail looks like in the very moment. So I'm letting my brain, yes, kind of skirt around and to be able to make decisions as I go. But it's not set. And because it's not set, I don't feel this immense amount of pressure that it has to be that thing, as we mentioned earlier, still, with something that I've never really constructed or drawn before. So this sort of shape, and maybe that sort of shape, to then this sort of form, with this inner detail, this sort of joint articulation derived from something that I have seen already. So these are based on then the curations of all that information I've gathered from the previous things that I've done before, which is sketching it, to also then having studied it, looked at it. So that's where all that critical thinking part is happening in the early beginnings of trying to figure out what that stuff is. But now that I have all that data in my mind, it's just making decisions. I want that thing, this thing, this thing, this thing. And then it's about piecing it together, which is now purely built off of the experience of it, having done stuff like this multiple times. Sorry, I'm going to scroll down a little bit past the chat window. Shy Guy's asking about how does one go learning the fundamentals, but for painting? Additionally, what medium, digital or traditional, would be best for learning it? To be quite honest with you, when it comes to painting, I still side towards learning oil painting first. I think oil painting is actually a lot more forgiving compared to some other mediums. For example, things like acrylics. I think acrylics is a very difficult medium to use. And why is it so difficult? It has to do with control of color, saturations, and values. Because with water-based medias like acrylic, even then things like gouache and watercolor, is that mixing it on the palette is difficult because you don't get what you mix. So what I mean by this is that as you mix a certain saturation and value on a palette and you put it into your painting, as it dries, it changes. So what you had thought you were mixing as a color, saturation, or value, you are not going to get. So what it requires you to do in terms of water-based media painting is to be able to predict and know what's going to happen as it dries. And it requires a lot of practice. So that's why water-based painting is really, really difficult. Whereas with oils, what you mix on the palette is what you get. So I think oil painting is a lot more forgiving. So when we're in school, like in art center, we started with oil painting first. Now, it's still a daunting task because on your own, if you're in a studio working by yourself, even just acquiring the materials and knowing what to get, the hard thing with when it comes to oils is knowing what kind of, how to use the material, basically, because there's a lot of process and step in terms of like what you would use to, say, thin it out, or what, methods of things like creating sort of like a medium, or even the process of actually going in the first steps. Do we just draw with it at first? Do we paint shapes with it? I mean, there's so many different ways you can do. You can do Polaroid techniques, and you can do, like, what do they call that? It's like a thin layer approach. I forget the name of it. Either way, there's, many, many systems and technique you can also learn as well too. So it's complicated. It's not necessarily, I'm not saying it's the easiest thing to pick up, but it is more forgiving on that side of color. Ahmed's asking, if you bought the book, how can you benefit from it as a beginner? Should I learn the fundamentals first and start learning from the book? Well, this is the fundamentals. The basic fundamentals of learning how to just use a pen to produce line and shape. It's about building muscle memory, building line confidence, learning how to just produce a line that is consistent, and then to building basic shapes. So this is fundamental based. It's not the most earliest of beginnings. The earliest of beginnings was maybe go towards things like, still life drawing, using materials that are a little bit more forgiving, things like graphite. Using the pens that we have are difficult, but there's a lot of benefits to it. But, is this truly or for the basics of beginners? I've had people in my classes that are starting from nothing, that had no educational experience. They came in for the art class for the first time, and they would knock it out of the park. So this can be picked up by even people who have never drawn before. And I've been teaching for over 15 years. I've had thousands of students, age ranges from teenage years, even as kids, all the way up to like senior citizens. I've had people coming from a different sort of like line of work. I've had people coming from different areas of industry focus, even professionals, of course. And typically, even from people that are just starting from the very beginning, usually can pick it up. Now, is it due to the material? To a degree. I think a lot of it, of course, is, me, myself, presenting that information in a manner where I think it can be picked up by understanding the approach. That's why then taking the classes become quite helpful. So just getting the book alone sometimes is not enough. So, sorry, connection was obstructed there a little bit. We're back on live. But, to basically get the book, look at it, see if it's interesting to you, then consider the idea of taking the class. Because then being in the classroom, being able to interact with me, getting feedback, will help really push your skill sets that much greater. Sorry, I kind of want to get this one out of the way because I feel like I can get hung up on these small details forever. So I don't want to do that. So I just want to just kind of finish out a few small parts that I really want to get, and I'm going to move on to another book. See some more questions though. Alien's asking, sorry for the question, but is it acceptable if mark making and pencil marks of your sketches differ a lot from the brushwork when you paint? And if not, what should you do to harmonize them? No, I think it's perfectly acceptable. Using multimedia to be able to paint with or to draw with, especially as you illustrate or produce pieces, and either for educational purposes or otherwise. Multimedia sort of like illustrations are very viable and acceptable. So should you be, let's say, more pure about the material that you use and only purely use oil painting or ink drawing, ink or pencil drawing? No, I think not. But again, we're also then talking more about the educational side of things. So there are certain benefits to limiting materials at some points in education. Claire was asking, what are some materials and mediums you always love to use versus some that you learn to love over time? For me, I would say gouache was one of them. Somebody mentioned gouache. I learned to paint with gouache during Art Center times, environmental paintings, and it was painstaking. It was really hard. The media is really difficult. The subject matter was really hard as well too. But over time, I began to love gouache way more. And to this day, I think gouache paint is one of the best paints out there. It's not one that many people will turn to because it is quite frustrating to use. But if you know how to integrate it within what you're trying to create, it's such an amazing paint. So that would be one of them, material wise. This is going to be just silhouette work on the back over here. Shapes. Even down to the legs, it's just shapes. Silhouette, contour. So we focus and emphasize up here. All right, let's move on. Let's go to a different one. You're going to see the stack of books I still have. These are the ones that are drawing, and there's that stack still. How can you use digital if you don't have access to the materials? I mean, you have to access it somehow. So what I did as a student, I would go to the library, go to the library and use their computers and check out their hardwares. That's what I did when I was like 19 in high school. Then eventually you just have to basically invest, save money and invest on purchasing those things. The first one I would start with is just maybe an iPad Pro and go to Procreate. Thanks for the update, Sam. On the NBA games, Clippers are up right now at the half. Ayrton's asking or saying to you, it's easy to imagine many geometric shapes, but things get harder when I need to keep proportions right. How do you keep your proportions right? Do you use reference set points in the drawing? All the time. References are truly critical in that side of proportional accuracy, but it's also in the repetition of the sketch. The simpler you can make it, it's easier then to reproduce. As you reproduce it, you analyze and look at in comparison to the referencing of how accurate you are in proportion, and you adjust it. Is it too long? Is it too short? Is it too wide? Is it too thin? And you make the adjustments through the repetition of drawing. So then you start to kind of adapt to those irregularities and make minor adjustments as you go, so that by the time you get to your second, third, fourth, fifth iteration, it becomes more true to its proportional accuracy. Because at the end of the day, you're still doing it by eye. So because you're doing it by eye, you're not going to get it perfect, but you want to get close as you can. Do I show halftones and textures like Viper scales? It depends on the material again. If I'm using a line work, typically no. I leave it open. Halftone areas, I don't really touch. I go into those just strong, cast shadow, form shadow sides. But in the halftone areas, I don't really touch. What's an exciting new technique or style you want to integrate into your work? I don't know yet. So I'm pursuing that as a thought right now. I'll show an example of a one line technique. Let's do this with like a character. So we start right away into the line. And the idea in this exercise is once you put the pen down and you begin to move, you are not allowed to stop. And you are not allowed to lift the pen away from the paper. This is not some unknown technique within figurative drawing or illustration. There's many, art systems and traditional methods that have used this before. But in dynamic sketching, when I was in school in the classes, Norm would have us train. This was way as well too. We would just move and draw with one singular line. And so you don't stop. Now, the hard part about this is that you're trying to figure out what this thing even looks like. And if you're using references, you're thinking about, man, well, I'm trying to look at what I'm trying to sketch, but I have to keep moving. So it makes it really challenging because you got to be able to move back and forth in areas and places to be able to hit those details. This kind of looks like a solid snake. One line all the way through. And you don't go back and try to fix things and add stuff. You leave it as it is. But it's one continuous line to flow through, but I'm finding shape and form, right? So this is not something that, is some brand new technique. It's been around forever. But that really helps you loosen you up. So once I do that one line technique, as I go back into something that's a little bit more, let's say, dissected based on shape to form and individual components and pieces, I can still introduce that sort of movement in these sort of isolated ways. So it generates still movement of line and shape that is very kind of spontaneous, energetic, because what's going to happen is that we generate line work or shapes that you would normally not do. So here I'm going to go with that one line technique again, just back and forth in some of the areas. Because that kind of line to me has a lot of energy. By going with a very constructive process, the lines can feel very stiff. So Ahmed was correcting. So you meant can you use a knowledge of the book digitally? Yes, you can. Absolutely. It transfers over just fine. Daily Doodle's asking, how important is confidence in art? I think in life, as most of us, as you begin to age a little bit, you realize how important confidence is applied to everyday sort of living, right? Confidence in yourself, confidence in how you see yourself, confidence in things that you do, whether for your career or for in other sort of daily things that you do. When we say confidence, we don't want to say pride, and we don't want to say it in a manner to show off, but to do things in a manner in which you feel comfortable. Obviously, the word of confidence goes into this idea of having that secure thing in which you can consistently do. And it's a trained thing, of course. And so, even in daily life, whether it's about a social aspect, how you speak to other people, how you present yourself, and many other different ways in how life can present those sort of like opportunities, it's a trained thing. So, people ask me, it's like, how do you speak? It's like how, if you're in front of like a live stream like this or in front of other people or crowds, did you just automatically know how to speak to people and just know how to talk? Of course not. I was extremely introverted and very afraid of speaking in public. Didn't like it at all. And I'm not going to say that that nervousness doesn't still exist. It still is there. But through training, by putting myself in that situation to then be able to learn and to be able to try and fail and also do over again, you build that skill set and you become better at it. That's where the confidence obviously builds. And I think the confidence is another way to put it is derived from the familiarity of your method or process and what you do. So if it's in sketching, being highly familiar to your steps and process and how you build something is going to secure this full confidence that you know what you're doing. Somebody had asked for like a dragonfly thing. Anthony's asking, can someone watch you do these live drawings if they want to? Well, yeah, this is just a store. It's open right now. So customers are just walking in and out, buying stuff, and I'm just sitting here at a table drawing. So people can come in if they want to. The skinny stream is saying your age is 46, getting back to drawing after 30 years of hiatus. Your video has been knowledgeable and useful, and thank you for your comment there. But I'm glad to hear that you're pursuing it at the age of 46. And is that too late? No, it is not. The most important thing is that you have just begun. It's not at what age you begin at, it's the fact that you started. And even if you had given it up at some point, to get back into it again, it's the right step. Just do, right? Act. There's going to be some kind of weird flowery growth on top of its head. I used to practice as a kid drawing flowers. I kind of got very obsessed at times with certain things. And there was a moment in my youth I would actually practice drawing this flower for some reason. It was kind of the petal effect that I really enjoyed, seeing the overlaps of shapes and whatnot. And I would just like repeat that over and over again. I think I'd seen it somewhere or seen someone do it. And so I would copy it and try it. And so in my youth, as I had developed those sort of like explorations, the remnants of that sort of like experience still retains in my work. This actually reminds me more of like those leaf hoppers. Crazy insects, leaf hoppers. Let's move on. Steve was asking, what art goals have you set for yourself this year? Any milestones to reach on projects and finish? Which is this next Dynamic Bible. So that over there are original pages of the second book right now. At the beginning of the stream, I had introduced it. Before we end today, which is in about another 15, 30 minutes, I'll show it again to kind of close it off. For people that are kind of joining in live, I'll show it to you guys again. Jojo saying, how do you get better at digital coloring? You find the application process to be quite difficult. Analyze other people's work countlessly. Curate it, collect it, art books, comic books, whatever cases, illustrations, and use it directly, whether it's like their palettes or even directly their images. Let's see here. Let's go into, we've done mechanical things. We've done insects. We've done animals. Let's do another kind of human character. But we'll make it some kind of demonized with horns things. It's just a female character with horns, and we'll put some like armor set on her. Ahmed, yes, these are all for sale. These books will be on the Stuart Ng Books website probably this week. So for those, again, that are joining in live for the moment for the first time, we are at the Stuart Ng Bookstore here in Torrance, and I'm signing books. So they got reprints of the Dynamic Bible in, and I'm doing live drawings in them, which is I more exclusively do for Stuart Ng. There are books available at like Liberdistry or SuperRunnerUS.com, but those books I don't get to touch. So those, if you wanted a live drawing in those, you'd have to find me at a convention or a show, which I would do. But here at this bookstore, I'm able to come in and sketch in them right here live. So all these originals, these sketches, and these books will be available at the Stuart Ng Bookstore this week. So even if you have a copy of the Dynamic Bible, maybe you want to get another one because it has an original sketch in there. Can you choose which one you want? Or it's basically random. Unless you're in the store. So if you're here at the store, then you can actually go through them and choose what you want. But if you buy them online, it's a random choice. You can think of it kind of like those blind boxes in a lot of ways.
So you can choose any. Yeah, that's really cool.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming in.
Thank you so much.
So we have people right now coming in and picking up books. KPEZ, hey, thanks again for your donation. I appreciate that. General message, you also drew you as Peter Pan. Yeah, so I get that comment a lot. And I'm actually a huge fan of that lore and mythology of the books. I don't want to call it mythology, but more of the actual lore and the world building of that storyline. So that's cool. I've always been a fan of drawing Hook. It's one of, I really like that character a lot, actually. Dorian, how's my experience way back in Croatia? How's the art scene there, and did you meet any good local artists? So what Dorian is talking about is that this is before COVID. I want to say probably around 2018, 17, 18. I can't remember exactly the year anymore, but there was a show there. It was a festival, art festival. My gosh, the name is, I'm blanking it for the moment. It's on the tip of my tongue, but it was set in Croatia. Maybe somebody here knows of it. It was initially held in Zagreb, and then they moved it to Split, Croatia. And so I went that year. They invited me through. God, it's just bothering me that I can't remember the name of the actual event. But in any case, I was there in Croatia, and Split is this really interesting little town because you see this huge amount of like Roman inspiration architecturally wise, because it's right on the coast of the Mediterranean. So it's right across from Italy. So when you're there, the structure is just so ancient looking. But you have a lot of shops and cafes and building structures built into it. But it's such an incredible visual, and I thought it was stunning. Did I meet any local artists there? Not necessarily, but there were a lot of the artists that came from all over the world to the event. So we were together, hanging out. That's actually where I met the Procreate people for the first time. And that's where I got to get to work with them a lot more because I got to know the reps and the people that worked under Procreate at that show. IFCC, that's what it's called. IFCC. But it doesn't exist anymore. So it's kind of like a THU or Promised Land event or We Are Playgrounds where they bring artists from around the world. And we'll do things like a lecture or a workshop and sort of like meet and greet and portfolio reviews, that sort of stuff. But it was held in Croatia. It was a beautiful country. I wish I got to spend more time there to explore. But after that event, I went to Rome then after that. But Croatia itself was great. To be honest with you, any country that I've been to for some sort of like workshop, travel, has always been extremely positive. I don't really have a bad sort of experience traveling, honestly. And I've been all around the world. Curtis is saying, I'm trying to improve my shape language. While I'm analyzing someone else's work, how do I pick up which shapes are the most important ones to study? Think of it more in the ideas of what are you trying to say? You literally said the idea of shape, language. So when we say language, we're talking about the idea of communication. So shape language is a visual communication. So what do I mean by communicating? Well, we're trying to communicate information to some party to inform them, whether it's about story or about function or about whatever you want to say. Now, we can use words. I can tell you based on things that I want to inform you about, but I can also then use visual to give you additional sort of content or information to give you even better sort of like context or ideas. So when it comes to shape language, we're talking about using shape as a manner of expressing and communicating to others and what you want to say. So what does that mean? Shapes mean something. They say something. Well, what do they mean? Well, the typical sort of like archetypes within shape language is the fact that we'll have in design standards of language: circles, squares, and triangles. They mean something like circles are soft and cute, square is hard and stubborn, triangles are dynamic and sort of like dangerous. But those are the sort of like tropes within design language, which you can also flip and alterate and hybrid and define yourself if you want to. But that's kind of the way it works in shape language. But from that, knowing what it is you want to say, you will then choose a specific shapes to communicate that information. And those are like the building blocks of design. So I do teach that in my sort of like design classes too. So shape language, that sort of stuff. Shape language is just one of the components of the equation of design. The second part of the equation is proportion. There we go. Let's put a little bit of decorative element around the shoulder piece here. Just to give it a little bit more visual flair. A little bit right here on the breastplate. There we go. I think we're going to keep things a little bit simpler now and push more towards just kind of variances of animals again. Ooh, this is a little bit too juicy. Let's go with a thinner brush. I love taking inspirations of animals and, like I said, doing kind of slight variant interpretations of them. I always found it to be kind of entertaining to play with that. For instance, like a markhor. No, I'm sorry, not a markhor, the ibex. The markhors have the corkscrew horns. The markhors are the Pakistani goats. These ibex, a little bit different. Warrior frog, reptiles. We'll play with that. Monkey king, we can definitely do a monkey king. Am I planning to visit Berlin for the art department playgrounds? We are playgrounds. This year, no, I didn't get an invite for it. I did it last year. It was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it quite a bit. But those sort of events, usually once they have one artist come by that one year, they don't necessarily always bring everyone back the same time around. There might be a couple that, you know, they bring back and return in cycle. But typically, when it comes to like an international artist, it's usually like a kind of like a one and done situation. So being in the U.S., it costs a lot of money for them to kind of travel and bring people over. So if they're local within the vicinity of like Europe, it's a little bit easier for them to bring those artists over. So they might reuse those people again. But then it might be like an alternate sort of like every other year sort of thing or every couple years. So would I like to come back? Well, absolutely. Any show that I've done, I would always return for anytime they ask. But it's going to be a case where I feel like it's going to be, maybe next year or the year after that, where I might hear a word. But for this year, there was no word. So I would not be at Berlin for Playgrounds. But I hope it's going to be a good event. There's going to be the typical, individuals that show up. I would recommend the workshop, which is going to be with Dominic Mayer. Super cool dude. Him and Bjorn are the two guys I hang out with the most when I'm over there in Europe, especially with those kind of events. And Camilla. Camilla's also really amazing. Sitting on a mountaintop here. Going into a bit more of an expressive line movement, being just a little bit more minimal strokes. Not trying to go into many heavy details anymore. But we'll still keep it lively and fun. Harsha is asking, what goes through your head when drawing the small differences between related species like tigers and pumas? Are you drawing specific knowledge of the differences of anatomy, of the differences in anatomy every time? Certain things for sure, proportionally. Anatomically, they'll share a lot of similarities, right? Musculature-wise, skeletal-wise, but proportionally they'll be different. Smaller head, longer bodies, bigger tails, bigger paws. So those certain iconic elements of that animal you would retain through memory by repetition of drawing and study. And so surface level wise, then you would use references and whatnot still to help curate that information of detail, but proportionally is where you want to focus on things. Not so much anatomical. Ahmed's asking about the classes. Are they online? They are. So which one is for beginners? The dynamic sketching. Can you go through the classes all digitally with the iPad? Yes, you can. And they are all recorded. They're live. They're 3 to 4 hours or more long. I do the lecture, demos, and feedback all in those rounds. And it's 8 weeks as a course. I offer sit-in positions where it's just a seat where you sit in and watch, which is a fraction of the cost, or the full payment, which I will give you full feedback. This will be a shield right here. Shoulder on that part. We'll have him leaping through the air. Put the scabbard down this direction. Put a bunch of pouches on the side. And we'll actually give it real frog feet. Here's your frog warrior. The most iconic frog warrior. I don't remember his name, but he will be that guy from Chrono Trigger, designed by Toriyama. Anybody know the name of that character actually? If you played Chrono Trigger, to be honest with you, I've never beat that game. I've played it a little bit, but never actually invested time beating it. Um, and I wish I could go back and play it more. I need to do it at some point. Mayor was asking, how are you able to draw animals in a zoo with the time limit of them moving again? I had a hard time finishing something, especially when drawing those small monkeys. When it comes to live drawing at a zoo, and it's not even just animals at a zoo, I'm talking about live drawing of any subject matter that's moving, let's say like people at a cafe or a bar. The intention is to not finish, quote unquote, the sketch. The idea is that you're trying to study things like basic pose. So that means the actual outcome of the sketch can be quite minimal and loose. If you want to finish it, quote unquote, which is ideas of things like polished, clean line, that sort of thing, you can do that by taking a photograph or researching it as a photograph online and finish it then. But on location, you keep it simple, quick, and to the point of just understanding the pose and move on. So that means each study should take you no more than a few seconds to establish the pose, and that could be based on things like line and stick figure. Just to build that, do a simple silhouette, but you don't need to even go for things like facial features and details of hair or fur. One thing is that animal might be too far away from you anyway, so you can't really see those things. So look at that stuff later when you go home, but when you're there, curate as much examples of iteration to study a thumbnail so that you can start to garner the understanding of how to construct it. Glenn. That was the name of the character from Chrono Trigger. Is that what I was thinking of when it came to this? No. It came up after. But that's fun. Let's do a Monkey King. We'll do the Sun Wukong version first. Just a head. This is as he has his headgear placed on him by the Buddha. Hanuman being the Indian version, different kind of god, similar being the fact that it's a primate, but a different character entirely, mythology-wise. A great god I liked studying in Japanese folklore was Susanoo. And then there was Sun Wukong, obviously. That's more the Chinese, but in Japanese, Susanoo was when I was introduced to it because of a graphic novel by Shiro called Orion. If you want to read a really cool graphic novel, manga, Orion is one that is seldom talked about, but I think is absolutely incredible, by Masamune Shiro. He did Ghost in the Shell, Appleseed, all that sort of stuff. But really cool Japanese lore integrated with like cybernetic kind of like mechanical things. But Sun Wukong, for the Chinese lore, especially with that recent game, started to really pick up in popularity. Sorry, it's kind of off the page a little, or off the camera. This vertical format I can't stand. I don't know why YouTube wouldn't allow me to rotate. I couldn't find the option for it. YouTube seemed to have like updated either their mobile app or something, but I found it to be a little bit clunky. I couldn't get it going live. At the beginning is really kind of like awkward because I started it and you see my face. I had to flip the camera, so it's gonna be weird when people rewatch it again. But the mobile version of this live streaming is not as intuitive. It's not as smooth for some reason. So even like the whole like horizontal format, I wasn't able to rotate the camera. It wouldn't allow me. So I don't know what's going on. I'm gonna have to like look into that a little bit if I do more feature streams off my phone, which is a bit of annoying because typically my phone experience of streaming has always been relatively smooth. So for things like Instagram, it's going to be great for sharing this sort of video. When you rewatch the video again, it's going to be in a vertical format, which is where you'll have the black bars on the side. So it won't be ideal in a horizontal kind of, setting, which kind of sucks. But, and I don't like streaming in vertical. So that's the reason why I don't do it on Instagram, because it's only vertical. So I don't know why YouTube was giving me this trouble today. What time is it here? Right now it's about 2:30. Harsha, in terms of like what stands out in the Indian version is purely more the costuming, the armor set, and the weapon that he holds. Right, that giant ball club thing. I can't remember the name of the thing. So it's the primate is the primate, which in Hanuman, the Indian version, he's much more human. Like the eyes and everything is very human, but he's got like the mouth of a primate. Whereas like Sun Wukong is more of like pure primate monkey. So Hanuman to me is more like a humanoid in a lot of ways, but the costuming is very ornate, especially the headdress and all that sort of stuff. With Sun Wukong, he has got those like large like peacock pieces and small little headpiece on the Chinese costuming. This version is my interpretation. It's not the original folklore version. But I really enjoy both in terms of character. Hanuman definitely would be a lot more powerful in comparison in terms of their strengths and godlike powers. Because Hanuman is straight up, a god, and Sun Wukong as well too. But he's not like a creationist god kind of thing. Bob, in terms of that question of studying subjects of other and to learn the structures, do you think copying other artists' shapes and solutions of said subject is detrimental to the learning process? No, I think it's going to be helpful no matter what. The detrimental aspect of it is when you get stuck into copying. So you have to be able to move beyond that at some point. So that's only when it would become detrimental, if you get stuck into the copying. Yeah, Jingu Bang, the staff that he has, that's his magical weapon. Then he has that cloud. The Gada, that's what it was. Thank you. The weapon from Hanuman. Trying to imagine a shot here. again, do understand that a lot of these sketches that I do are derived from nature or cultures and religions and folklores. But of course, there's always that twist of interpreted aspect to it.
Look at that. Oh, no.
So Bob then adds to this, which is to avoid getting stuck copying, you suggest trying your own interpretation and problem solving at the times. Exactly. Will YouTube say this stream? It will. But in this format, most likely, which is why it sucks. Sorry, I wish I could have made it horizontal. I was trying to, stopped it, started it over multiple times, but it just would not let me do it horizontal. There was a question earlier about traveling, and it was a question that I can't read right now, but I remember what it was, which is, have I been to Egypt? I really wanted to go there. This was right before COVID. This was in 2019. I was actually researching agencies that would do, help on tourism and travel and stuff like that, because I was just going to go by myself. It wasn't for any sort of event. I just wanted to go. So I looked into it, but that was right then, right before where COVID actually came in, and it basically like canceled everything. I reached out to a couple agencies, talked to them, trying to get a price point, that sort of stuff, and I was interested in wanting to go for a long time, and still want to go, but we'll see, if it happens anymore at this point. The reason why it stalls it mainly because of just how busy the year gets and all the amount of stuff they have to be able to do. The phone rotation thing should not be locked. It's on right now, actually, as I check it. Julia, have I been to South America? No, it's also another destination I really want to see. The typical places like Peru and whatnot, but I've always wanted to see the Galapagos. But anywhere in South America would be awesome. Uh, Questions about Dynamic Bible 2, we'll talk about later on. That's my favorite thing to draw. It's like, as you can see, as we've been streaming now for about 2 hours, I draw a lot of different things. And out of all the stuff that they drew, there is no favorite. I always say this, which is, it's the act of drawing that I enjoy the most. It doesn't matter what it is. So I find it very entertaining. And I think, leading to that question, what's important about your educational approach is, as you do things like dynamic sketching and you draw a multitude of subject matter, what you're trying to develop here is having this sense of a curious mind. The more curiosity you can build, the more you will pursue all these various subjects. And you begin to then build confidence in that because you become familiar to those things. So we're almost at 2 hours, 50 minutes. Let's do our last like 10 minutes here. And we're going to end our stream real soon so I can finish with the rest of the books. And I hope that you guys have enjoyed so far our stream, just sketching together. This is the Dynamic Bible, the first one. We'll talk about the second one in just a moment before we end today. I've already announced it. I've already talked about it at the beginning of the stream, but I'll do it again at the end so that people that are joining late can be privy to the information. He's always actually really buff in lore. Exactly, Hanuman. They make him like a bodybuilder. Exactly, as you said, Pallavi, that Hanuman is definitely more portrayed as human with primate-like features, as I mentioned earlier. He's got. That's what I said earlier. He's got like human eyes and ears and everything, but then he's got that mouth of a primate, and everything else is basically human. When people ask me to draw Hanuman, though, it's like I always love doing a bit more of a primate version of it because I'm on the side of like the creature s sort of things, and I've done actually quite a few Hanuman client asked pieces in the past, commissions. I had this one client that comes to Comic Con in San Diego annually, every year, and he asked me for a new Hanuman piece every single time, watercolor. He's just one of those guys that comes back and says that he just loves my interpretation of Hanuman, and he frames all of them. He has his office. He's like a lawyer, and he's Indian, and he always loved seeing people's interpretations of the character. So he'd ask me to do it annually, all the time. I I've done Ganesh a couple of times. Need to do a few of the other individuals. My favorite interpretation is Tarada's. When he released his Monkey King book many, many years ago, oh man, I mean, that was like groundbreaking to me. And I wish he continued it because he only made that one book collection and he just kind of moved on. What I loved what he would do is actually he would do these little sculptures, like on clay, because he loves his 3D stuff as well too. His Monkey King sculptures were really cool, little head studies. There we go, Hanuman. Okay, last one for the stream for today, and then we're going to move on to just talking about the Dynamic Bible 2 real quickly. Garg, that's a pretty complex one because he had multiple subjects in there. Something like that I would be able to draw, but for this, in this case, we probably would not have the time to do so. In terms of like having a character destroying a moon-like structure. The reason why that one becomes also not as It's not that it's difficult, it's just that the focus becomes more about the destruction of a planet. Visually, you have a character that's small. And so then you have a planet this big. So as a drawing of illustration, it becomes more about the effect, which can be really cool. But in terms of the outcome of a sketch for the book, most people will be like, it's a cool image, but they most likely wouldn't sign to that. But I think it's a really cool concept. It's one that I could probably draw. Great Eagle, yes, they do ship international. Just go to stuartngbooks.com. Stuart, Stuartng books.com. I'll put a link on it in the descriptions. Let's see here. Let's do our last one for the moment for the stream. Yeah, so Skinny Stream, that's where you're going to want to go to this bookstore online. They'll have these copies with the original sketches available, probably this coming week. Let's see. Somebody mentioned Max talking sword. Once he said that, I have a memory of Roger Rabbit and that singing sword that he pulls out. I'll try to maybe combine something like that. How about we do something like this instead? This would be the hilt. Some kind of face like structure. Which would be the blade. And this thing will be speaking. We'll put some kind of dialogue down there. And the sword we planted into something. Let's put a forearm here, some kind of armor-clad character. And maybe we'll mechanize him. What that means is we'll have things like pistons, wires, and gears. Some kind of piece of material fabric draped across this direction. This would be his torso area. And there'll be like some kind of face of a creature down here. He's been stabbed. Huzzah, created. Thank you for the donation, man. Appreciate that. Let's put the head up here. And same thing. This how like these little intricate details are just suggestive, indicative, nothing real specific. When it comes to these sort of mech details, they're actually derived by human anatomy, meaning I'm taking things like muscle and turning them into like plates of armor. And in between those spaces, I'll throw in things like indicative ideas of wires and gears and pistons and rods, framework, chassis, that's the sort of stuff. So all this stuff in the lower end will be very kind of light, minimal in terms of detail. I'm going to focus it up to the top here. But this sword will have a face, and he's going to say something. Somebody mentioned the idea of a talking sword. And then I think it was a Julia that mentioned the mech. In these sort of situations in live streams, when we start getting suggestions, this is where you guys act on it as well too. You do your interpretation, your version of it as I'm sketching. Follow along. Do your version of it as well too. If you didn't get to sketch and draw, well, next time. So that means always have a pad of paper, always have some kind of pen or pencil available next to you, so you can just kind of pick it up and just start playing. I think when it comes to stuff like this, I mean, I've been streaming for hours now. You can only watch somebody draw for so long, you know. And the only reason why you stay is because I talk. Yet you ask questions and I can answer them. You can imagine sitting here for hours just watching somebody draw and not saying anything. You could only watch that for maybe 20 minutes, and you'd be like, okay, I'm done. So then if you're then here and not really interested in speaking as much, this is where you'd want to sketch and draw with me. And so again, thank you guys for your feedback. I appreciate hearing stuff like that in terms of your enjoyment, but also the overall experience of what you're getting from these streams. Again, it continues to entice me to come back and do more of it. So hopefully before classes begin, maybe even as I go into this coming week, we'll try to do a more solid stream in my setup at home again. So look maybe towards, what is it right now? Today's Saturday. Maybe next week on a Monday or Tuesday, we might try to do one again. We'll see how it goes. But like I said, follow my Instagram, social media. That's where I usually post on the stories about when I'll be doing one as a pop-up. It's never scheduled. It's never kind of like prepped or planned like when I'm going to go on. It's purely based on like when I'm interested in doing it and when I have available time. So let's go into the creature and add a little bit more detail now here. This is that pig-inspired creature. Somebody mentioned pigs multiple times. So here's a creature with a pig nose. Just playing with all these different visual concepts and just kind of now using my memory, visual library to instantly mash and play with and mix together things on the fly. And this is not some special skill because I'm better in some way. It's not that at all. I think this is a trainable thing. This is not a talent. This is just the amount of work you put into it, and you're able to achieve them to a certain degree of level, in my opinion. And the thing is, there are people that are 10 times better than I am, but because I enjoy it at a competent, confident level, it allows me to, pursue it and also elevate my own skills in a manner where I don't feel the pressure that I have to be a certain thing. I am not the Kim Jong-gi. I am not these artists like Carl Kempinski. I am not, Eliza or Nicholas. You again have that confidence, say just who and what you do and who you are, and what you're able to give. It's no longer about trying to match or to be a certain thing anymore, to be labeled. You do it because this is the only thing you want to do and the only thing you can imagine doing. And if you're able to invest to that degree of level, which I have since I was very young, those words will slide off. It's like people trying to define who you need to be and what you need to do. You don't need to take those sort of like definitions from other people. You make your own rules. So then don't worry about things like posting online and people commenting on stuff that you feel is unfavorable or things that's going to be judged. Doesn't matter. You do it because you enjoyed it. You just wanted to share it. People that liked it will follow it. They don't, forget about it. We'll move on. So as you guys move forward, have that same level of confidence, which is not about a confidence in how well you execute a drawing, but confidence in yourself. Your uniqueness and the things that you offer based on the way you lived your life, share those things. Do it through your work, and that's what's going to make it stand out. Plain artist, yes, I am at the bookstore in Torrance. You are welcome to stop by. I'm going to be here probably for another 40 minutes to an hour. Yeah, the state of the world is kind of at a tumultuous time, but no matter where you're coming from, who you are, how you see yourself, represent yourself, all of it is good. And all of you are worth and valid to be able to pursue the things you enjoy doing. Nobody should tell you otherwise. So that's why it's great to be on YouTube, to have this multi-international, sort of like grouping of people where, yeah, I'm in America, and the current, sort of message what's going on right now is that America's closing its doors, but I don't represent that. Have I seen the manga Gachakura? I'll look it up, Andrew. I haven't heard of it, but I'll look it up.
Is it cool if I just watch?
Oh, yeah, you're more than welcome, man.
Kim to watch it specifically.
sorry?
Came to watch you specifically.
Yeah, of course. If you have any questions, let me know.
What is the idea you're drawing?
Well, I get a lot of suggestions online about, draw this or draw that. I get, different sort of subject matter. Typically, I start off by drawing things that I like by coming in here, and whether it's like in these live moments or online and stream, and I just kind of play with things that I find interesting, and I'll just go ahead using Visual Library, but then I'll get a lot of suggestions in the chat. This idea, that idea. So what I'm doing right now is an amalgamation of all those things. Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
I've been watching your stream for like the past 2 hours.
Oh, that's cool, man. I'm glad you're here live.
That's why I was like, maybe I should come down.
Yeah, Nylock, Daniel Warren Johnson is an incredible comic artist. I would highly recommend you guys look at his stuff. Probably one of the most dynamic illustrators and comic artists I've seen. The guy's crazy. Super humble and nice, too. All right, let's look it up. Taste my steel. So, as we're wrapping up this particular page on the book, I still have a whole stack of books on my left to do. Before we end the stream today, I'm going to continue sketching at the store. So if you guys are local in the area of LA or whatnot, you're welcome to stop by. We're at the Stuart Ng Bookstore right now. But I do want to just kind of retouch upon this last portion. Again, we started with this, so I'll wrap it up with this as well too. But basically, again, this book was in process and being worked on over the many number of years, and I've gotten numerous requests about when the next one's coming out. So there's no confirmed date just yet. I am in the process of working towards getting the second one done. This is volume 1 of the Dynamic Bible, and the Dynamic Bible basically is a collection of all my lecture notes, the class that I teach about being able to build muscle memory, building visual library, being able to construct and deconstruct the many things in the world that you can see. And we start off with 2 subject matters in this book, which is insects, bugs, and then vehicles of the automobile, the car. So this first book was done, but the intention was always to do multiple volumes. People ask me, it's like, what is the difference between this and that very first book you put out? Because I did a Dynamic Bible back in 2016, and that was a self-published book. And that particular book is a collection of all my lecture notes into one book. But the thing is, each subject, like insects or vehicles, only had like 4 pages. And so there wasn't as much in-depth information in that book compared to the newer volumes. So the new ones here under Superani is I wanted to dive deeper into these subjects where there would only be then 2-3 subjects per book. So the second book is intended to release this coming year. And people wonder, it's like, well, when? There's no date, as I said, just yet, but the book is complete when it comes to the written iteration and all the thumbnails I have to do. It's done. Now I have to generate the actual pages, which is what these pages actually are. So the 3 subjects that we have to cover are bone structure. So I talk about skeletal systems, how to break down form, how to understand articulation, shape, form combinations, being able to plan out 3 dimensions of structures. This is all about articulation joints right here. All these empty spaces is where text will go. So this is where all my written information of notes will go into it. And then we apply them to then actual skeletal systems for bone and how to make them look more natural. Taking very complex things, being able to organize it. So this is just only the first chapter, which is the bone structure part. Second part goes into military vehicles. So we'll have mechanics and vehicles of a military nature in the second portion. There is a third component chapter to the book, which is going to be marine life, fish, and different types. So this second volume will have 3 different subject matters. That means the first volume has all the exercise notes. Those exercise notes will not be repeated in every single book. So if people want to get the exercises, they have to get the first book. So each volume will have individual, unique subjects that I'm going to cover. So this is all the original art. So I thumbnailed everything, and I go straight into the pages, and I just draw them out with pen. But they've already been designed do my thumbnails as to like where the content will go, where text will be labeled out. So once I'm done with these pages, I'll then scan them high resolution, and then I'll obviously print this with Superani. So when potentially, ideally, I wanted to have it done by summer, but realistically, more likely it's going to be at the end of the year, near close to New York Comic Con or Lightbox Expo. So the book right now is about a quarter of the way through in terms of all the original art. So I still have to do the tank stuff and the fish things, but this stuff doesn't take me as long to do. Then it's about the design of the book, but that will all get done hopefully in the coming month or so. Yeah, so people asking about, is there a PDF version? There is not an official PDF digital book. But is there a floating copy online? You can't stop stuff like that. And that's the part of the problem when it comes to, products and stuff like this that people can scan. And, even my original, very first Anime Bible, there's a digital version floating out there somewhere. But do understand that it's not official. So I don't back them. There's no money coming to me. And I'm not going to stop them because what can you really do? I keep generating new content, stuff that's going to attract you guys to the original source, to me. And hopefully you will come back and support what I will do, and also the people that are working with me, like Stuart Ng and also Superani, and we'll keep going for this into the future. So if you're looking for still a copy of the first book, StuartNgbooks.com will have copies of these ones right now. These are all the ones with the original sketches right here being lined up. And those will be online probably in the coming week or so. I will be at Comic-Con San Diego this year. Again, unfortunately, not having copies of the second volume just yet, but I will still be there to sign probably the first one and also just do live original art. End of the year, which will be New York Comic Con and Lightbox Expo, that's ideally when this will come out. But the stream, yes, we're about to end real soon. So if anybody has any last couple questions, please let me know. But if not, we are going to wrap things up. This has been about a 3-hour session. But Larissa's saying, I wish you can get a copy of one book. But shipping, yes, that's going to be one of the problems. So this is where you guys will have to be a little bit patient in terms of maybe you can find yourself in a position to afford that into the future. Go to certain events as well too, which may have copies of the book. For example, local Comic Cons, or even if you travel a little bit. That's when you'd want to actually go to it. So anyways, that's pretty much the overall experience for today. Next time I come on, I will most likely be on for this coming week. Look towards maybe a Monday or either end of the week or so. And I'll probably come back online again. So look towards my Instagram stories. I'll post when I will go online, and we'll try to do a horizontal proper format. But for now, when this gets reposted, you will see it in a vertical. But, like I said, hopefully you'll find the content still appropriate and you'll check it out. But thank you guys again for hanging out. Take a look at my descriptions area. I'm going to update that in terms of the links for Stuart Ng Books. Stuart Ng Books usually goes to a lot of different conventions and shows. They'll set up and sell books of various types. This is the actual store that we're in right now. You'll start to see the amount of stock of stuff they have. It's a crazy store, a place that's quite dangerous because they carry very nice and very rare and very interesting art books, and no other art bookstore is like it. So check them out if you can. Give them a support. Give them a follow on Instagram or on YouTube, and we'll do more in the future. Thank you, guys.